case something new comes up today.
Perfect.
And we'll go ahead, see if our full screen will work the first time this time. Well, I'm happy to have a small group this morning, and thank you so much for starting your Monday with us today. As you all know, you are here for the final step of the priority-based budgeting implementation, which is peer review. Looks like my slides are going to be slow again today, but it's going to happen. I tried to close out everything that was going to take up a lot of space, but it just is taking its time. Just as a review of the progress that you've made thus far, we've gone through the program or service identification, the cost allocation, department scoring, and today we'll focus on peer review. For today, our goal is to just discuss the methodology of the peer review process, why we do it, how we do it, and then we'll actually look at a template so that you all are familiar with that. I'm just going to keep on moving, even though the screen hasn't caught up with me yet. This first section is really just review for most of you, but just talking about what we've done to get to this point. So we've gone through the result identification and definition, which is what is going to tie your budget to your strategic plan. You all, as department leaders, most of you have gone through, and as experts for your department, have gone through the scoring process. I'm going to come back to this slide at the end so you can make note of office hours. But we've gone through and defined the results. You all have scored as departments. So now we're going to shift from department subject matter experts over to result area subject matter experts. So each one of you has been assigned to a particular result area or BPA, and you and your team will become the experts for that result area. After that peer review process has been done, then the super users and leadership team will take the scores that you've provided during this last step and will determine the final scores. The process throughout is really to provide transparency and consistency throughout the process. So we've defined priorities so that every single service that you all provide will be scored against the same criteria. So all community services will be scored against the community results. All the governance services will be scored against the governance results. You as experts for your particular area have applied scores to your services, and now during peer review is the opportunity for the rest of the organization to provide input and validate those scores. At the end, the super users and leadership team will go through, look for any inconsistencies, recognize any errors, and will finalize the scores to go through and be able to utilize the data. At the end of peer review, each one of your services will be assigned a quartile. Those in quartile 4 are those that we designate as least aligned with your overall goals. Those in quartile 1 are most aligned. This is not meant to mark any service as unnecessary, but simply to look at what is most aligned with what your city as an entire organization is trying to achieve. So potentially looking at those services that fall into quartile 4 and to see if they can be offered in a different way in order to reallocate resources and time to those services that are more aligned with your overall goals. So we're going from this department self-assessment as subject matter experts over to the peer review result area subject matter experts. So as we dive into the peer review design, we're going to talk a little bit about just why we do this. And the first and I think most important is that everybody within your organization has an understanding of the services throughout the organization. So you all know what the services are within your department. But through peer review, you're going to get to look at the services throughout the organization and understand what other departments are doing, how they're spending their resources, and how they're spending their time. This provides additional transparency into the process as you go through and look at how a department scored their own services, and you can try to understand that score, validate that score, seek more information, and then finally input your, as a team, your understanding, and you'll complete it with a score from your peer review team. This is meant to apply consistency and fairness across the entire organization, and it gives you the opportunity to apply input that will impact the entire organization, not just at the department level. So you all have all been assigned to a team. I know we had a big group on Friday and some got to meet following that meeting, but the first thing that we're going to ask of each team is to identify a team facilitator. The team facilitator is going to have the role of creating the meeting schedules for the team. They're going to be the one who is going to be in further communication with other departments and with the super users. And then they're going to be the ones responsible for submitting the final score sheet back to Lisa and Megan in order for us to upload it into the tools. When you set up your meetings, we do have some recommended steps to take in each meeting, but the first step is to just look at the scores. They're going to be organized from highest score to lowest score, and just to firstly go through and identify the ones you agree on. Make a note of those that you disagree with and those that you need more information on. As we move through the peer review meetings, then you'll use the department feedback, or what we've called department comments, to help you with identifying or validating the scores. And then you all as a team will put in your scores as the final recommendation back to the super users and leadership team. Ahead of your first meeting, there are some things that you can do to be more prepared and more efficient. And the first is to become really familiar with the results and definitions that you're responsible for. Just read through the result and each supporting definition and make sure you understand it to the fullest capacity so that you're ready to begin reviewing those when you get into your first meeting. Another thing you can do is to look through the entire service inventory and make sure that you understand what a service does or what it provides. If you have questions about that going into that first meeting, go ahead and have those services noted so that that can be something that you can check off your list early on in that first meeting. What you're going to do in the initial phase is to go through and make sure the score makes sense based on the definitions within your result area. So we're looking at the service's influence on achieving that result area. As you go through, if you need to get more information, then that's when the team facilitator will reach out to the department who has done the scoring for those services. So if you don't understand what the service is or what the service does, then you'll probably want to seek more information. If you don't agree that the service influences the result in the same way, you might need more information. Or if you don't agree that the score assigned has the same level of impact that the department score did. So you as a team will decide whether you agree, or you'll decide if you're going to recommend a change. And you'll enter those scores in the template, which we will review in just a few moments. You don't need to try to assess services against other results. You'll go through the same steps that you did when you were going through the scoring process, and we're going to review those. And then just really try to take this opportunity to learn more about what the other departments are doing as you become more familiar with the entire service offering. So the couple of tips that you are probably familiar with, but we're just going to touch on quickly, is to read each definition out loud when you're going through and evaluating each service. Just make sure that the service influences most of the definitions. If it does, then that service deserves a higher score. If it doesn't, then that service might deserve a lower score. But keep in mind, that if it's critical to one definition, it may still deserve a higher score, and that's what you and your team can discuss and evaluate. The second tip is to think about if that service disappeared, would it significantly impact the ability to achieve the result in a positive way? If it would significantly impact, then that service deserves a higher score. If it doesn't significantly impact the ability to achieve the result, then we're looking at a lower score, or a 0 if there's no connection to the result area. Again, just some hints on things that you don't need to spend your time doing in order to keep your meetings efficient. But the results have been identified and defined, and so we don't need to consider whether or not they're the right results. We're not going to change any definitions at this stage of the game, so we don't need to worry about redefining, but you just need to be concerned with understanding the definitions. We're not going to assess the relevance of services. They're the ones that have been costs have been allocated to and have been scored, so we're going to stick with that service list, and we're not going to look at any of the other result areas or to contemplate the costs or efficiencies within that service. As you're going through the process as peer review, you will likely recommend some changes to scores, and that's okay. So you are looking at least 12 to 14 different result areas, including the BPAs, which are the basic program attributes. So if you're recommending a score change for one service in one result area, don't be concerned that you are condemning a service or that you're rocketing a service to the top of the priority list. Just know that it's important for you to be as honest to your understanding and perception of the service and its influence on the result area, and make the recommendation that you truly believe to be correct. Do we have any questions thus far?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Moving on to kind of the structure of the meetings that you're going to be attending. We've made a recommendation that each team meet 3 times. I believe that we are going to ask you to schedule an hour and a half for each one of those meetings. In that first meeting, again, we're going to look at the scores from highest to lowest, and you're going to identify the ones that you agree on first. Once you've done that, then you can begin to look into the services where you feel like you need more information. Once you've identified those, the team facilitator will come to the second meeting with any additional information that was required. You'll recommend scores for those services that you hadn't addressed in that first meeting. And then in the final meeting, you'll come to a consensus on the entire list of services and save and submit your peer review scorecard back to the super users. Just as an example of ways to approach the peer review process, these are 2 services from your service inventory, and this is how they were scored against the result area of healthy residents. So adult daycare and jail services both scored a 4 in healthy residents based on department scoring. So that is saying that these 2 services are essential to the healthy residents result area being a success. So you have at your disposal in the template, you'll have the service description, and then you'll have the department comments regarding that service. So it's looking at the description and the comments and seeing if the score makes sense just based on the definitions, the description, and the comments. But then looking also at in this example, these 2 services. Does it make sense that both of these services scored as essential against this result area? So when you get through making your recommendations, go back and look at the group of services that scored a 4 and make sure that it feels consistent across those services. Then you'll go and you'll look at all the services that scored a 3. Make sure you feel like that's consistent across that score. Some things to note as you are going through this: if you need more information, make a note, go back, have the team facilitator go back to that department if there's something that you don't understand. So if the description and comments didn't help you to understand what the service is or does, or if there's an acronym or some data reference point that you don't know what it is, then that's something that you would want to follow up with the department scorer. As another example from the city of Duluth, their service of business continuity and disaster recovery with the description of planning and testing of business continuity plans. So this scored against their list of results across the bottom. It scored a 1 in compliance with the peer review comment of minor compliance, or I'm sorry, this is the department comments, minor compliance requirements to meet state audit requirements. It scored a 2 in customer service with the comment of, in the event of a disaster, having a plan contributes to the continuance of customer service. And then it scored a 3 in trust and transparency. Having a functioning plan fosters trust and transparency by ensuring integrity of our systems. So then when you're looking at the other result areas, how would you score this service? So when looking at the result area of high performing org, these are the other services within their inventory that scored the same as business continuity and disaster recovery. So looking through, scored a 0, looking through for consistency. Does it make sense that business continuity and disaster recovery scored the same as city council meals, as P-card, as city council reapportionment, as payroll processing and reporting? Just really trying to feel out if it makes sense that all of these services scored a 0 and have the same level of influence on the success of the result area. So looking at it more as a whole, once you've gone through and assigned your peer review scores, then looking to make sure it makes sense as a group of scores going forward. Just so you know, when we get into the template, every single service must have a peer review score. Those scores must be a value of 0 to 4, no text entries, no symbols. We are going to need those scores of 0 to 4. This is what the peer review scorecard is going to look like. So you'll see the department score is in that 3rd column. Again, it's going to display from highest to lowest scores. You'll see you also have access to the service description, the department comments, and then we have this 3rd comments section here, and that's for you all as the peer review team to enter any information that comes up during your meetings. So this would be a great place to note that you need more information. This would be a great place to note the rationale behind your recommended change for a score. And that will be of great help to the super users and the leadership team as they go into the final score process, for them to understand from the peer review team's perspective why the scores are the same or why the scores are different. Then you will enter your value of 0 to 4 in this column called Score Peer. And so if you agree with the score, you'll just enter a 4 next to the 4 that's already there. If you are recommending a change, you'll enter the value of that score that you are recommending. Okay, I do want to go back. Let's see. And just go back to this second slide that I skipped over earlier so that you can see we are offering a couple of office hours so that if your team has any questions of me or of the process during your peer review meetings, we are meeting on Thursday, September 20th at 9 a.m. or Thursday, September 27th at 11 a.m. You can come to these office hours with any specific questions that you have about your peer review process. And then one last thing I wanted to show you. This is a scorecard from the city of Alexandria. And I just wanted to show you again. It's going to show the result type, the department that the service came from, Then we'll have the service name in column F, the description, the department comments, and then your opportunity to enter peer review comments in this column I. Again, we will have the definitions available to you in this second tab. So if you don't have your cheat sheet that Lisa created for you handy, you can always just come over to this second tab, and it will have all the definitions that support your result area. Okay. I think that's the information I wanted to cover. I'm available for questions if you all have any.
Does anybody have any questions at this point for Liz? OMB has a few slides that we'll go through with you afterwards, but I want to make sure you guys are good.
So the office hour, it's not mandatory.
No. Yeah, we ask one person from the team facilitator, or someone if the team facilitator is unavailable, to just check in. For the office hours, they will be in this room, but there's also an opportunity to join the Zoom meeting like Liz is joining us now, and you can either, if you have a microphone enabled computer, you can just chat there, or you can text chat, like you can type in the chat box. So our goal is just to allow at least one person from every team to kind of say, hey, yeah, we're getting there, or we're through it, or one person could ask the 6 questions you may have. Yep. Anything else at this point? All right, Liz, I think that is it for this. I'll switch over to the OMB one now if you'd like.
That's great.
You can.
That sounds great. I'll be in the background in case something else comes up.
Okay, great.